I never imagined a quiet Sunday morning could turn into the moment I declared war on my own HOA, but that's exactly what happened. I was sipping my coffee on the porch, my dog Max lying peacefully at my feet, tail tapping the wooden floor in that slow, lazy rhythm he always had, when a white envelope slid under my gate as if someone was delivering a threat rather than a letter. I picked it up, already sensing trouble because the HOA never contacted residents unless they were looking for money or power. The moment I opened it, my jaw locked. They had fined me $800 for owning a disruptive, dangerous, unauthorized pet. My dog? Max? A golden retriever who couldn't harm a butterfly? I stormed outside, and that's when I saw her, Karen, the HOA president, armed with her clipboard like it was a weapon. She stood there smirking, her oversized sunglasses reflecting my anger back at me, her pink dress blowing dramatically in the morning breeze like she was posing for the cover of HOA Tyrant Monthly. She didn't even wait for me to speak. "Your dog violates multiple HOA rules," she announced in that condescending tone she used to make people feel smaller than her perfectly polished nails. I told her Max had been in the neighborhood for years and never bothered anyone. But she just tapped her pen and said, "Rules are rules. Pay the fine or the fee increases every week." Then she walked away like a villain exiting the scene after dropping a bomb. I looked down at Max, who was staring up at me with confused puppy eyes, as if asking what crime he had accidentally committed by simply existing. And that was the moment something clicked inside me. Something I didn't know I had. I wasn't going to let this woman bully me, and I definitely wasn't going to pay $800 for a lie. But I also knew one thing. You can't fight the HOA head-on. You need strategy, evidence, and the kind of plan they never see coming. Then suddenly, I glanced at Max's collar, specifically the tiny attachment hook that I usually used for his ID tag, and an idea formed. An idea that made me smile for the first time that morning. If the HOA wanted to lie about my dog, then my dog would be the one to expose their lies, and he would do it in a way they would never recover from. Over the next hour, I dug through my old tech box, found a mini body cam I bought years ago for hiking, and fitted it perfectly onto Max's collar. It was so small no one would notice. Max just wagged his tail like he was excited for a secret mission. Little did he know, that's exactly what he was about to start. That same evening, while the neighborhood settled and the HOA members wandered the streets doing whatever they pleased because they believed no one watched them, Max quietly roamed with his new toy, recording every move they made. And by midnight, I had footage that would shake the entire HOA to its core. This was no longer about the $800 fine. This was about exposing a corrupt board using power like a weapon. And my dog, my gentle, harmless Max, was about to become their worst nightmare. The next morning, I woke to the subtle sound of birds chirping, but my mind wasn't on nature. It was on the footage Max had recorded overnight. I connected the tiny camera to my laptop, my heart pounding as I scrolled through the clips, and what I saw made me grin in disbelief. There she was, Karen, the HOA president herself, storming across the neighborhood, tossing trash into flower beds, parking across someone's driveway, and even loudly complaining while letting her dog bark uncontrollably right next to a neighbor's window. All of it recorded in crisp, undeniable detail by Max's camera. My anger shifted into a strange, focused determination. This wasn't just about the fine anymore. It was about exposing the truth and letting everyone see the double standard, the hypocrisy, the audacity of people who thought they could control others while breaking every rule themselves. I watched as Max padded quietly alongside her, invisible yet powerful, capturing every infraction with a calm, steady precision that would make any private investigator proud. And then, my smile turned into a plan. This wasn't going to be a small confrontation. I wasn't going to argue or complain to the board. I was going to let Max do what he does best, be in the right place at the right time, and collect undeniable evidence that would humiliate them publicly, legally, and completely. For the rest of the day, I studied the HOA's patterns, watching their social media posts, newsletters, and even casual reports from neighbors who had always whispered about the president's tantrums. Every small action,
Every repeated hypocrisy became a thread in the tapestry I was weaving, a tapestry that Max would carry on his collar with perfect stealth. By evening, I had my strategy. Max would accompany me on short walks, visiting areas near the HOA office, the community garden, and streets the board frequented. Every step was carefully plotted to ensure that the camera caught violations, littering, unpermitted construction, barking dogs they ignored, even ignoring their own parking rules. Max wagged his tail, oblivious to the power he now carried. I felt a thrill watching him, imagining the look on Karen's face when she realized a dog was holding the key to her downfall. The suspense built every time he padded past the HOA members undetected, his little collar camera silently capturing every angle. I even caught one of the board members leaving a tree stump in a public area, something they had fined a neighbor for last year. Max caught it all, and each clip I reviewed made me more certain this was going to work.
By midweek, the plan was ready to shift into high gear. I wasn't just collecting footage anymore, now it was time for action. Max had become a silent observer, padding alongside HOA board members during their routine checks, recording every misstep. The beauty of it was how unsuspecting they were. They thought they ruled the neighborhood with absolute authority, but a little golden retriever with a tiny camera was about to dismantle that illusion. That evening, I set up a viewing schedule for myself. Laptop on the kitchen counter, cups of coffee lined up, and Max resting at my feet, tail wagging as if he knew something exciting was coming. The first clips I played back were golden. Karen stomping through a neighbor's yard, shaking her finger at a child for improper landscaping, while her own untrimmed shrubs blocked half the sidewalk. The board's vice president casually tossing trash into a public planter that they had fined someone else for polluting. Each frame was evidence, undeniable and humiliating if made public. My pulse raced as I edited the clips, highlighting the hypocrisy, the arrogance, and the sheer audacity of the people who thought an $800 dog fine could intimidate me. But I didn't stop there. I needed witnesses, real people, neighbors who had been quietly frustrated with the HOA for years. I sent discreet texts. Watch this. You'll want to see this. Within minutes, small groups of neighbors were gathering at my porch, laptops open, eyes wide as Max's camera revealed the board's actions in shocking clarity. Their gasps and whispered comments gave me confidence. I wasn't alone. And then came the perfect stroke of irony. One of the clips showed the HOA president herself stepping on a neighbor's flower bed, muttering something about rules being rules while clearly breaking hers. That became the highlight reel. I realized the dog, Max, had done more than just follow orders. He had captured the perfect combination of comedy, outrage, and hypocrisy, footage that would humiliate the board without exaggeration. By nightfall, I compiled a short 10-minute montage of all the most incriminating moments. Max had even managed to record snippets of their conversations, complaints about difficult residents, while plotting fines for trivial matters, entirely oblivious that the little dog was collecting everything. I sent a copy anonymously to a few neighbors and watched as the reactions rolled in. Texts, exclamations, and quiet whispers of disbelief. Everyone was shocked. Everyone was angry. And now, I had leverage. The next step was to make sure the board couldn't ignore this. Not with threats, not with fines, not with condescension. I wasn't just fighting back, I was orchestrating a moment of truth that would expose the very people who tried to intimidate me. Max, lying on the rug at my feet, tilted his head up at me as if sensing the tension in the room. In that moment, I smiled. The dog wasn't just a pet anymore, he was a catalyst for justice, and together we were about to deliver the most satisfying lesson the HOA would ever face. The suspense wasn't just in the footage, it was in the timing. The right moment to reveal it had to be perfect, public, undeniable. And when that moment came, the neighborhood wouldn't just watch, it would witness a transformation. What started as a petty $800 fine had turned into a story that would shake the HOA to its core, and Max, in his quiet, unassuming way, had become the hero of it all.
The day of the reveal arrived, and I could feel the tension buzzing in the air like electricity.
I didn't announce anything. Instead, I invited a few trusted neighbors under the guise of a casual dog play date. Max bounded around the lawn, tail wagging innocently, while I set up a small projector on my porch. I dimmed the lights just enough so the evening sky gave a golden glow, creating a perfect atmosphere for what was about to unfold. One by one, neighbors gathered, curiosity written all over their faces. Then, I pressed play. At first, there was silence, punctuated only by Max's soft panting. The first clips rolled, Karen glaring at a child for leaving a garden gnome crooked, while her own driveway was blocked by a neighbor's trash bin. The crowd chuckled. The next clip showed the HOA vice president dumping coffee grounds into a public planter, immediately followed by Karen scolding another resident for littering. Laughter turned into gasps. The evidence was undeniable. Then came the pièce de résistance, footage of Karen herself walking across private lawns, stomping over flower beds, muttering about rules being rules while completely ignoring the ones she enforced on others. The neighbors leaned in, whispering in disbelief, and I could see the seeds of outrage forming in their expressions. Max, oblivious to the gravity of the moment, padded through the small crowd, camera still recording, capturing candid reactions of everyone present. The suspense was unbearable, the kind where you can almost feel time stretching as each second passes. I paused the video at the perfect moment. Karen looking directly into Max's little camera lens while loudly proclaiming, "Pets aren't allowed to interfere with HOA rules." The irony was delicious. I looked around at the neighbors, their faces glowing with shock and amusement, and then I spoke. "This is why the $800 fine never made sense. The dog didn't break any rules. You did." A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd. Phones came out, neighbors recorded, and suddenly the story was spreading faster than I could have imagined. I didn't even have to say much more. The footage spoke for itself. Max had become the silent witness to their hypocrisy, the unassuming enforcer who exposed the board's double standards. Then, the final twist. I sent a copy of the footage anonymously to the city council, making sure every violation was documented, legally undeniable, and tied directly to the HOA's actions. The combination of public humiliation and legal threat hit the board like a tidal wave. By the next morning, Karen was frantically calling board members trying to figure out who leaked the footage, unaware that the little golden retriever at the heart of the story had orchestrated it all without a single bark of protest. Neighbors approached me in small groups, thanking me, congratulating me, even laughing at the sheer audacity of the plan. Max wagged his tail as if he understood that his innocent steps had delivered justice. And I realized something important. This wasn't just about a dog, a fine, or even an unfair HOA. It was about proving that anyone, even a little golden retriever, could stand up to corruption and emerge victorious. And as the sun set that evening, casting long shadows across the neighborhood, I knew that the board had finally met their match. And it had 4 paws, a wagging tail, and a camera that captured everything.
By the following morning, the fallout had begun. Word of Max's footage spread like wildfire, and the HOA office, usually a fortress of smug authority, felt eerily exposed. Karen arrived, her pink dress stiff with indignation, sunglasses perched on her nose, but there was no confident smirk this time, just panic. Board members shuffled behind her, trying to look official, but the mounting pressure of public scrutiny and undeniable evidence was crushing them. Neighbors had gathered near the office, smartphones in hand, ready to document every move. I watched from a distance, Max by my side, both of us quietly observing as chaos erupted inside. Karen slammed her folder on the desk, yelling about unauthorized footage, harassment, and defamation, but the murmurs from the crowd drowned her out. Then came the moment of poetic justice. I had prepared a carefully crafted letter citing every city ordinance and HOA violation the footage had captured. A volunteer neighbor read it aloud for everyone to hear, detailing fines and penalties that the board themselves had violated over the past year. Gasps, laughter, and applause erupted from the gathered residents. The HOA had tried to wield power like a weapon, but now their weapon was turned against them. Karen's face turned purple as she attempted to argue, but the city inspector, who had arrived quietly in response to anonymous complaints, stepped forward and validated every claim. The fines for Max's so-called infractions were immediately nullified, and the board members were formally warned about their misconduct. Max, completely unaware of his celebrity status, wagged his tail as a small child ran up to pet him, whispering, "You did it, Max. You are the hero." By mid-afternoon, the neighborhood felt different, alive, united, and empowered. Residents who had stayed silent for years now approached the front of the HOA office, thanking me for showing them that rules could be challenged when enforced unfairly. Karen tried one last desperate act, attempting to intimidate a neighbor with a fine notice, but it bounced off like a harmless paper in a storm. Every resident had their own copy of the footage now, and the threat held no weight. I realized then that Max had done more than just expose hypocrisy. He had galvanized the entire community. People started talking openly, forming committees, and discussing real solutions instead of living in fear of arbitrary fines. The dog that had once been accused of chaos had brought order, fairness, and a long overdue lesson to the HOA. And as the sun began to dip behind the horizon, casting golden light across the small, victorious crowd, I looked at Max and thought, this is what justice looks like. Silent, unexpected, and delivered by the most innocent hero imaginable. The HOA president, once untouchable, was now forced to face the consequences of her arrogance, and the neighborhood had reclaimed its voice. That evening, as Max curled up at my feet, I realized the story wasn't just about a fine or a dog or even the HOA. It was about showing that courage, planning, and a little bit of cleverness could turn the tables on anyone who tried to bully the powerless. And in that quiet moment, I understood something important. The smallest, quietest heroes can sometimes create the biggest change, and no amount of authority can stop the truth when it's caught on camera or when it comes with a wagging tail.
The days that followed were surreal. The HOA office, once a symbol of fear and control, now looked like a house of cards about to collapse entirely. Karen, the president, tried to regain some authority, but every attempt was met with laughter, resistance, or direct evidence from Max's recordings. Residents who had been intimidated for years now openly challenged fines, questioned arbitrary rules, and demanded transparency. Meetings that once felt like public punishments turned into forums where the community had a voice. Max, of course, was at the center of it all, not in the spotlight, but always quietly present, tail wagging, camera still attached, as if reminding everyone that justice had four paws and a golden heart. I watched him one evening, sitting on the porch, as neighbors chatted across lawns, kids ran freely, and laughter replaced whispered fear. It was more than a victory over an unfair fine. It was a transformation of the neighborhood itself. Karen eventually resigned under pressure, and the remaining board members were forced to restructure the HOA, bringing in new leadership elected by the people. New rules were drafted, emphasizing fairness, transparency, and respect for pets, gardens, and homeowners' rights. Max had become a local legend. His story was told at block parties, shared on social media, and even featured in community newsletters. People who had never spoken to each other before were now united by one simple truth. A dog, loyal and observant, had taught an entire community that corruption and arrogance cannot hide forever. And every time I passed the HOA office, I could see the subtle signs of change. The residents planting flowers in previously forbidden areas, laughing without fear, and occasionally tossing a ball in the open lawn, a silent nod to Max's heroism. I sometimes smiled at the thought that all of this had started because of a petty $800 fine, a fine that tried to punish kindness, obedience, and innocence. Instead, it revealed the flaws in a system that thought intimidation could rule a community. Max had done more than expose them. He had inspired everyone to stand up, speak out, and demand accountability. And as I sat there one evening, Max resting his head on my knee, I realized the true lesson of it all. Courage comes in all sizes. Authority is meaningless without integrity. And sometimes the most powerful hero isn't the loudest, strongest, or most commanding. It's the one who quietly observes, captures the truth, and reminds everyone that fairness and justice can't be silenced. The neighborhood was no longer afraid, the HOA was no longer untouchable, and Max, my dog, my partner, my hero, had shown everyone that sometimes a wagging tail is stronger than a gavel, and one dog with the right plan can teach a lesson that no authority, no matter how confident, will ever forget. And in the warm glow of that evening, as Max dozed peacefully, I whispered softly, "We did it, buddy. You taught them all a lesson they'll carry forever."